Good afternoon to you. The Prime Minister is under increasing pressure to sack his Home Secretary, but Downing Street insists Rishi Sunak has full confidence in her. Suella Braverman defied advice from Number 10 to change a newspaper article in which she accused the police of double standards over its handling of pro-Palestinian protests. An extra 1,000 officers will be drafted in to help the Metropolitan Police, as thousands are expected to take to the streets for a pro-Palestinian march this weekend. Outside her home this morning, the Home Secretary ignored questions about her future and the comments she made.
Are you resigning, Home Secretary?
You're off to Downing Street, Home Secretary.
You have to get sacked. Did you forget your resignation letter, Home Secretary?
You're going to apologise, Home Secretary.
And the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, would not be drawn on the Home Secretary's comments.
Well, as many other Cabinet Ministers have said, the words that she used are not words that I myself would have used, but I have a productive relationship with her as a colleague, and I've always given her the money that she needs to fund the police, bring down crime, and to fund the immigration and asylum system.
Would you get away with doing what she's done?
Well, the Prime Minister has said that he has full confidence in her, and I have nothing further to add.
Our political correspondent Rob Powell joins us from Westminster now. And Rob, seeing Jeremy Hunt there, that's the second MP, certainly, that I've seen smiling when they say that the Prime Minister or they have confidence in the Home Secretary. What does that tell us?
Yeah, I think this thing of whether the Prime Minister has confidence in Suella Braverman or not, it's fairly meaningless in a situation like this, because Downing Street always says the PM has confidence in his Cabinet Ministers until the point, frankly, where he doesn't and he decides potentially to get rid of them. So I shouldn't read too much into that at this point. At the moment, Rishi Sunak is, not for the first time, considering the future of Suella Braverman, his Home Secretary. And I think that's part of the point, that this isn't the first time that the Home Secretary has caused headaches for Downing Street. And that's part of the reason why you have seen some backbenchers voicing their dissatisfaction and their suggestion that maybe Mrs Braverman has gone too far this time, with that piece that she wrote in the Times newspaper where she accused the police of double standards, of being more lenient over pro-Palestinian protesters, and making comparisons to marches in Northern Ireland that some have branded ignorant and offensive. She has her backers, though. The Deputy Chair, Lee Anderson, someone that's popular within the party and the rank and file, said that she was entitled to make these comments about the police. And also Anne Widdecombe, a former Tory minister from the major years, someone who's now part of the Reform UK party, also says that Suella Braverman has a point. This is what she told us earlier.
I think an awful lot of people, including me, feel that what she has said about the police approach is right. I mean, there does appear to be a bias. They'll arrest street preachers at the drop of a hat, but people can shout jihad, jihad, and they do not make any arrests. Somebody can stand there with a placard saying nothing, and they'll say, move on, you're a breach of the peace. But the people who are actually yelling out highly contentious stuff, they don't get arrested. So I think the police do show bias, and I think Suella is right on that score, and I think a lot of people in the Conservative Party and in the general public agree with her.
Now, in terms of what happens next, we know Number 10 is looking at how that online article, that piece in the Times newspaper as well, came to be published. We know that Downing Street requested some alterations were made to it, and not all of those were made by the Home Secretary and her team. This isn't a sort of formal, official probe or investigation. It's more of a sort of informal exercise going on within Downing Street. The suggestions we've been given are that there may well not be any movement on that front today. Part of the reason for that may be that there's quite a few moving parts in the coming days, not least the pro-Palestine protests that are due to take place in London and across the country tomorrow, alongside or a few hours after the remembrance services for Armistice Day that are going on as well. You then have the judgment coming from the Supreme Court on Wednesday about the Rwanda asylum policy, a flagship policy for the Home Secretary, with rumours potentially of a reshuffle as well. So Rishi Sunak really has to try and calibrate and try and make a judgment over, if he does get rid of his Home Secretary, what will it mean for the fragile peace in his party? But if he decides to keep her, what does that mean for his image and the attacks that we hear from Labour of him being too weak to control his ministers and his party?
Yeah, certainly a tricky position to put the Prime Minister in. Thanks very much, Rob Powell there. Well, as we've been talking about, 1,000 extra police officers are being called in from across the country to support the Metropolitan Police this weekend. In the past hour, the Met has released details of the policing operation. It says that 1,850 officers will be on duty on Saturday. Then, on Sunday, 1,350 officers will be on duty to police events across the capital. Our crime correspondent, Martin Brunt, joins me now. Martin, how do those numbers compare to other protests of this ilk?
There will be more police officers than there have been in previous weeks. So we've had 4 weekends of marches, and last weekend, I think the Metropolitan Police said that there was something like 1,600 or so police officers, with 150 or so from outside the Metropolitan Police area. So the figures have gone up. They're talking roughly about 2,000 on duty over the 2 days of the weekend. Not so many perhaps on Sunday, but there will be some ceremonies on Sunday. But the focus very much on Saturdays, tomorrow's big planned protest and march. Lots of police and exclusion zones. They're being introduced too. Police say that they are using their extensive powers to limit broadly where protesters can go. Their argument is that this will help police identify troublemakers and make quicker arrests. Their big concern, as we've been saying throughout the day, is the threat from breakaway groups. And they say that over the past few weeks, they've seen more activity, more attempts by breakaway groups to remove themselves and cause trouble away from the main protest. They mentioned specifically reports of poppy sellers being threatened. Now, British Transport Police have said that there isn't much evidence of that, but the Met Police say in the last few minutes that no intimidation of poppy sellers will be tolerated. I think even though there haven't been many incidents, there is a fear building up amongst poppy sellers that they may be targeted. So the Met very conscious of that. Exclusion zones, well, probably where you might think they would be, around the Cenotaph and Whitehall and Westminster Abbey. Of course, the organisers of the march have already said they're not going to go anywhere near those areas. But anybody associated with the protest who does try to go to those areas can be arrested. And there is already, and there has been since yesterday, a 24-hour guard around the Cenotaph. Nothing from the Commissioner himself, a dignified silence. He's got a big job to get on with.
Yeah, certainly has. Martin Brunt, thank you.